All right, welcome back to How's Your Book? I'm Cole.
And this is Marcus.
And it's been a while since we last did a video.
Yeah.
As I'm sure is like very common for little baby video makers. And so we're back today with a couple of videos that we're going to work on. But we wanted to start with a video just sort of like catching up on things we've read since we last talked to you guys. And so like the last time we made a video was when we were talking about two of the books that we read for Victober, and prior to that we made a video about like our Victober intentions, and we never came back.
And we didn't read most of those books, you'll notice.
Yeah, so we read some of those books. We didn't do terribly.
Yeah.
We just didn't, we were aspirational.
It's not for us to say whether we did terribly or not.
The Victober
you
police.
the viewer, can be the judge.
Yeah.
But, Victober 2026, we're revisiting the ones we didn't get to. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, we're going to talk about what books we've read since then, which would have been November, December, and just January. Yeah. All right. So Marcus is going to start us off first. Several of these books we either listened to the audiobook together or read in person, one of us reading to the other. So Marcus is going to take lead on some of those since I read more books than Marcus in those three. So what's up first? Who we got first?
So we listened to The Warden by Anthony Trollope together, mostly during car rides, which is a fun way to listen to audiobooks together, of course. So we really enjoyed The Warden. Not super long, so if you're looking for something that doesn't take as long to get through, that's a good pick. The narrator is Timothy West and does a great job with a lot of character voices. Probably my favorite character voice and character is the Archdeacon, Archdeacon Grantley. I love Archdeacon Grantley.
Yeah, so for those who don't know, The Warden is one of the books in one of Anthony Trollope's major series.
I think the series at large is called like the Barsetshire Chronicles, and I think only the first two books follow the set of characters. And this is our initial foray into Trollope, the Barchester Towers and the Warden.
Yeah, and I think initially we picked out The Warden because we wanted an audiobook for driving around, and we were excited. We heard that Trollope was really good, and we were excited that it was a pretty short audiobook. The Warden's like only maybe like as long as
six, more like around 6, but yeah, it was something that it was well suited to whatever driving journey we were doing. It wasn't going to take 20 hours and for more trips to get through. So that was part of it. Yeah, I mean, I've, in particular, I think with Trollope, the one I always hear a lot about is Phineas Redux. I hear, a lot about how amazing Phineas Redux is. You also have a lot of options with Trollope, right? Prolific guy, so you have a lot of places that you can decide to start with.
Yeah, so I think it's fair to say that we both absolutely loved The Warden,
yeah,
and are really excited to continue with the rest of the series. Sort of a spoiler alert for what we're reading currently, but we are currently listening to Barchester Towers as well. And I would say we just really love, or I'll speak for myself, I really loved the narrative voice. I think it's really funny and charming, and it breaks through in interesting ways that felt very novel. And I also like how sort of richly depicted the characters are, including the Archdeacon, who in some ways is a little bit he's sort of a goof of a man, he's sort of an antagonist in some ways, but it still has very he's very personal, he's richly drawn.
Yeah, I mean, he's not classically sympathetic as such. He is a obstinate character, but I think his appearances are always interesting, and he's forceful and memorable, and has a lot of good passages.
Trollope does a really good job of depicting the character, but then you get these interior depictions of what the character's thinking, or how they approach the world, that are really charming, and they are very, I think in a way, feel very universal. So definitely loved The Warden and would recommend it, especially the narrator is really good. He brings a lot of presence to the performance.
Yeah, and I think our impression of Barchester Towers is that it's a nice refinement of The Warden. It's a longer book, so it's sort of an expansion of the concept, and I think seems like a refinement on certain points. I mean, it seems like it's a common feeling that in the latter portion of the Warden Trollope goes maybe a little long on his sort of monologues about Mr. Popular Sentiment, which is supposed to be Dickens, and about the newspaper. There's a feeling that in the latter portion of the Warden, maybe these opinion sections go on a little bit too long. I think in Barchester Towers you sort of see sort of refinement of everything, I guess, is at least my impression.
Yeah.
As we go through it.
But we're not finished yet, so we'll hold off. Maybe we'll do like a review video of like the actual 2 books. So what was the next book that we read together? We have a copy of it.
Was it Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde?
Yeah. By who?
This is by Robert Louis Stevenson. We listened, Cole has this nice Norton Critical Edition. We actually did listen to an audiobook as well.
Do you remember who narrated?
Yes, it's narrated by Peter Joyce, who there are recordings of several Victorian classics by him. I had listened to George Gissing's New Grub Street by him and really liked it. Of course, there are a lot of, I mean, that's what's fun about classics too, is you can pick from so many narrators. There are lots of versions, lots of readings of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, and you have tons of options. We did listen to a few samples.
Yeah, Marcus really enjoys audiobooks, and specifically like he really likes getting into like who are the specific narrators and like follow them and stuff. So like classics are a great opportunity for you to explore that. Again, it was like a great one for like, this is short, tight. I hadn't read it before, but obviously was familiar with like some of the imagery, I guess, and like some of the story. And it was your first time as well, right? I would say like we both liked it, and we in part were reading it for Victober, but it was also a book club pick at one of our local bookstores, which was really nice, and it made for an interesting conversation. And yeah, I think we both really like the framing device of like second order, sort of like not the first main characters, but like a friend of the main characters being involved in what's going on, and like how that impacts our perspective and understanding. I particularly liked it as a sort of novel where you can think about it as about like male friendship.
That's a good point.
Yeah. Did you have any other particular thoughts from?
Well, it's
been a while.
It's been a while, and it's also one of those books that, of course, has been so analyzed and dissected that what are you going to say about it that's so original, right? But I think we like this. I think we do like the frame of there's a viewpoint character who has some oddities, but relative to the weirdos he's about to get mixed up with, he's more normal seeming.
Yeah.
I mean, you have recently read Wuthering Heights. I guess you could say that about Lockwood, right? He's a little antisocial, he mentions, but then he gets mixed up with a lot weirder people than himself.
He doesn't even know about Nellie yet.
No. We a while ago listened to a collection of Agatha Christie stories. What was it called again?
It's like
The Mysterious Mr. Quinn. I think?
It's that collection.
And those stories have a frame character, Mr. Satterthwaite, who I don't know. He has a reputation for liking to hear about people's misfortunes and gossip, but I guess he's kind of a boring guy otherwise. And he gets caught up in mysteries and of course with the mysterious Mr. Quinn. I guess it's fun when there's this frame of like, hey, here's this guy
walking down the street.
Here's this guy who's sort of boring, I guess, but he's gonna get mixed up with some stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Strange Case, we read it. All right. So, our next book, I'm going to talk, I read A Case of Mice and Murder by Sally Smith. This was a fun one. And it's a mystery novel. It's the first in a new series by Sally Smith. The series is The Trials of Gabriel Ward, who is our main character. And he is a lawyer, or a barrister rather. It's set during 1901. And so it's like kind of at the beginning of like a lot of changes in how like detective work could have been done. It was really good. I really enjoyed it. It feels, the world in which it's set is like very lovingly characterized and drawn. And Gabriel Ward is like a very thoughtful figure. Our friend pointed out, they also read this book, and they pointed out that it is kind of nice to read a novel, a mystery novel, where the main character, the detective, is sort of like he doesn't want to be doing this project. He's sort of like pushed into trying to figure out what's going on. And so there's like a little bit of reluctance there, which I think is really interesting and nice. Yeah, so it's got like two different things going on within the story. There's a murder, and then there's also this other thing where a litigation is happening related to the authorship of a recent children's novel. And these two stories intersect in an interesting way. And I really like that it sort of treats all of its characters with compassion, even if the characters seem to be doing bad. So, yeah. Just a quick note. One thing that I forgot to say about this book is it does very much in the beginning feel like a debut novel where the author is writing, maybe overwriting and throwing a lot kind of on the page. A lot of things are more wordy than they need to be, more characterized than they need to be. And it's maybe about the first like 150 pages or so, to the point where I was really questioning whether I wanted to keep going. But I'm very happy that I did, because she really hits her stride and lets the characters and the world that she's depicting speak for themselves rather than really trying to like prove herself with every sentence. So there are some quibbles for this book, but it does, I do recommend trying to pull through. I recommend it.
Thumbs up.
Yeah, thumbs up. I'm definitely like interested to read the next book. I think it was like a solid mystery. Sometimes mysteries books, the mystery can feel a little bit secondary, but it was there and like nice. So definitely recommend. So Marcus, what do you got? Day of Silence.
Oh. So I read this collection of short stories by George Gissing. I am an emergent Gissing fan. I've read Just the Odd Women and New Grub Street so far. His two most famous books. But you know, I want to keep reading. And this is a nice Everyman Classics edition of some short stories. I think this is like came out in the 90s. It's edited by Pierre Costillas, who is like, I think was like, you know, the world's leading Gissing scholar.
Some of these you found very like emotional too, right? Or like very affecting.
Yeah. The title story, the story chosen as the title here, The Day of Silence, is definitely a tearjerker. So that one's definitely a really sad story. I would say a lot of them are like, you know, maybe some of them a lot of them are darkly funny, but a lot of them are funny. I'd say this is a fun collection if you want stories about people who wake up one day and decide to do something really wacky and crazy, or you know, people whose circumstances change a lot unexpectedly and they have to figure out how to deal with that. There's a story I was going to read to Cole, but she fell asleep. It's called Fleet-Footed Hester. In the notes to this book, there's some interesting writing that clarifies that the Fleet-Footed Hester story is actually a reinterpretation of the myth of Atalanta. Gissings was a big classics guy, although you know that's not what he primarily wrote about. So anyway, he was ahead of the curve. He was spearheaded the
watch out, Madeline Miller.
The Greek myth reinvention genre. You know, the father of the genre.
Yeah, it was him.
Yeah. So these are really fun. I wonder if, because like it definitely seems like part of the appeal of reading Gissing is that you read something and you're like, oh yeah, that's so Gissing, you know, because it's some theme he was interested in, or you like tie it to the knowledge you inevitably wind up having about his life.
Yeah.
So it's like one of those, right, where part of the fun is like picking up, oh, that's a classic like theme of his, or like that's something that like obviously he was like speaking from some level of experience on, you know. So for that reason, I wonder if it's more fun to pick up these short stories like once you've already started getting into Gissing a little. On the other hand, I think short fiction, like for me, is appealing sometimes as like an introduction, because you know it's like a fun sampler and you get these bite-sized bits that you can decide, you know, does it seems like this writer appeals to me based on this like, you know, fun little sampler package, you know. So you know, I guess it, you know, could be fun as a sampler, but maybe there's some enjoyment once you kind of like have, started to get a sense of like what Gissing's deal is, and as you read these, you have smiled to yourself and being, oh yeah, that's very Gissing-y. This reminds me of a theme and something from New Grub Street, or
Now, would you find or did you find that the stories, their quality was fairly consistent throughout, or was it sort of ups and downs, or solid across the board?
That's a good question, because I guess short story collections can have that. I'd say I found it to be very consistent. I didn't have stories that felt like they were dragging or anything for me personally. Yeah, on the back of this book, Mr. Costillas, I assume, he says, Gissing's short stories paint a remarkably honest and perceptive portrait of life in 19th century Britain, revealing him as equal to Maupassant and Chekhov. Now, I haven't read Guy de Maupassant or Chekhov, but, that seems like a big claim, Chekhov? He invented the gun! But, yeah, this is a really fun collection. I'm glad to have found this edition. If you get into Gissing, it's fun to, look for what editions are out there.
And I think you'll be excited to revisit it too.
Yeah. We're currently reading...
Spoilers.
Hold on. We're currently reading some stories from Thomas Hardy in his collection, Life's Little Ironies. Hardy has been called Gissing has been called the Urban Hardy. So that one's called Life's Little Ironies. One of Gissing's short story collections that the stories in this come from is called Human Odds and Ends. Those are similar titles, right?
That's good.
Those are both suggestive of, right? What they're aiming
yeah,
for.
That's good. All right, next. So one of the books that I read next, I don't have a copy of, but I got Swordheart by T. Kingfisher from the library. Oh, here's a little...
It's a very pretty book.
Beautiful book.
Very pretty.
A little controversial. I don't really like edges, like the colored or sprayed edges. And T. Kingfisher's fantasy work. I haven't read any of her horror work because I don't read horror really, and I don't want to. But her T. Kingfisher's fantasy work I really like. I really love.
I've sort of wondered regarding horror whether you'd like The Exorcist, but I don't know for sure. But I think you might kind of like it. I think you might like it.
And T. Kingfisher is a bit of an instant read for me. I was at the library and looking for something that would be comforting, enjoyable, and saw it, picked it up. It follows a main character who her husband died many years ago, and she was living with her husband's uncle, and for a long time, and part of his household, supporting him, that sort of thing. And so her uncle, by way of marriage, when he died, left his property and his fortune to her, and her husband's other relatives are not happy with this and are being really aggressive and trying to contest it. And so at one point she's trapped in a room, and there's a sword nearby, and she pulls out the sword for reasons, and out of the sword comes a man. And so there's a man in the sword, and the book follows her and him trying to make sense and sort of sort out this legalistic problem going on, so that she can have the resources that she needs to get by in life. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. I read a chapter of it to you at your request. It was very funny and seemed really cool.
And it's definitely one of those ones where you are aware that T. Kingfisher has certain tropes that she likes. She's got a certain style of guy that she likes, and a certain style of lady. There's slight variances and stuff, but it's really fun. I strongly recommend it. At some point I would love to buy a copy. I can envision myself rereading it again. I did like it more than Hemlock and... By Hemlock, I actually mean Hemlock and Silver. Sorry about that. Silver, which is the one that involves sort of a mirror dimension world. Yeah. But I like her stuff. Her stuff is great. So, yay, T. Kingfisher.
Whenever somebody has tropes or, markers or themes that they're interested in. I mean, if you like them, you're reading it and you're like, oh, what a nice auteurist touch. If you don't like them, you're like, look at this hack. Look at this annoying hack.
Yeah, well, and it's like some of the things that she likes to do are less my vibe, and so I have a little bit of like, yeah, T. Kingfisher likes this, but like she still does it really well, and I admired it, and like I'm okay with it, right? So, but I like her work so much, but I like that T. Kingfisher stuff is comforting to read, but it doesn't feel like it's like swaddling me. Yeah, there's definitely like bad stuff that happens in T. Kingfisher books. Like there's things that are difficult and hard, so it's not all cozy.
And probably more so in the horror ones that you don't read.
Yeah. Listen.
Yeah.
Marcus has thought about reading some of the horror ones before.
That's true.
So maybe at some point
They got cool covers.
They got good covers. Yeah, she knows how to get a cover. So Marcus, what did you read next?
I read a book called Dark Night of the Mountain Man by William Johnstone and his son, I think. Probably mostly the son, I would think. But
is that ageist?
Maybe. So I've like bought some westerns here and there like over the last few years. I think this is the first, like some Louis Lammer and some other stuff.
Why did you start getting westerns? Like where did this come from?
Reading can be sort of a gender affirmation, gender expression exercise. And so, doing a survey of the like
my gender's westerns.
Well, doing a survey of the dad fiction genres can be, I think, an important part of life. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I've read a few like sort of military thriller types like that you see at CVS.
Marcus is like, okay, let me pick my masculinity. Yeah. My masculinity is gissing.
Yeah.
And dad books you see at CVS.
You just want to see what the deal is,
Yeah.
Like I've read a couple of those military. I read like one or two Brad Thor's. Vince Flynn, who's been deceased since 2008, but his name is still on the books, of course, and everything. But Kyle Mills writes some of the latter Vince Flynn ones. Those were my favorites, I think, of the military thrillers. I read. Shout out to Kyle Mills, he's really good. Yeah, stuff like that. Anyway.
So this book,
yes.
Dark Night of the Mountain Man.
So again, under the same impulse, I've picked up a couple westerns here.
And they're usually cheap. That's probably part of it too.
That too. I think this is the first one I've actually bothered to read so far. No, but I'm gonna read more of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. How'd you like it?
So like this book is like not unpleasant to read. Like I don't think like it's poorly constructed or anything. But I do feel like this is like a children's book for adults. Like, we've got our hero who's had 500 adventures, and he has his little support structure of characters. He has his homestead, farmstead, and his ranch hands, and his supportive wife, and then a little mystery happens. The stakes are the stakes are never so high, I think. He doesn't really go through it like that, or anybody near the hero character. Mm-hmm. And then, at the end, he resolves it. And so it's very uniform and breezy. Like I said, it's...
Did you like it?
Well, not especially.
Okay.
Like I said, I don't think it's, like, poorly written as such. Like, it is in no way poorly written or unpleasant to read. Like, the prose is, like, at a good level. I think it's just, like, extremely, like, the narrative is very basic. And it is a, like
neat, it's not doing anything interesting, but it's okay.
Not really, yeah. It's a neat little A to B adventure. Like, very, very straightforward, not a lot, of wavelength. The spectrogram here is not a lot of ups and downs. I did grab this one because I like the animal attack genre.
It has a bear on the cover.
Yeah,
you'll see the cover. Yeah. Ooh, see, there's a bear on the cover.
There's the bear. I like the animal attack genre. My family, we love to watch animal attack movies.
Jaws.
I watched
essential.
Jurassic Park like every day when I was little on tape. And so my family has a strong history with the animal attack genre. This book disappoints a little on the animal attack front. I don't want to say more.
But if the viewer is like you and wants an animal attack book, this might not be the one. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, like the scenes where people like get got, they're okay. You know?
They were got.
Yeah. But it's not. It may not. Yeah, if you're coming to it as a animal attack, you might be a little disappointed. Yeah. When I was little, I had a book called Grizzly, and it was I bought it at a book fair, and it was all real animal attacks. It was a collection of real animal attack stories. They sold this to children, and some of them, like, children die in these stories, and these are real stories that happened. It was
Is this
grim.
an American book?
Yeah.
Wow.
Of course, we'll have a picture of that on screen too. Great book.
Do you
Pick
know
it
what
up.
the book is?
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Look that up on like Abe Books. Get it for your children.
The other book that was kind of fun, or the other thing that's funny about this book is that Marcus and I went to a book swap event where like you bring some books. People know what book swap events are. You bring some books,
And if you don't, you feel like a real dummy right now.
No. You bring some books. Other people are also bringing some books, and then you can leave with other books, or presumably the same books you brought.
This was our first time at a book swap event.
Yeah.
Don't worry. We were new to it too.
And one of the things that I found fun about going to the book swap was seeing how quickly or who picked up my books.
Yeah. You're monitoring your books, seeing whether they're gonna go.
Yeah, and
at first you kept telling people, I brought that one, and I was like, stop, you're gonna make people feel pressured to take them.
Poor Dark Knight of the Melon Man.
Yeah,
it didn't. I don't think anybody took that book.
It went, but yeah.
It will find its reader.
Yeah, absolutely.
Someday.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So yeah. All right. Are we ready for next? So next was another one of the books that we read together, which is The Headache by Tom Zeller Jr.
Mm-hmm. This was read to Cole by me while Cole was using a Cephaly device, which is a device for treating migraine disorders or preventing or mitigating.
Yeah. So for background context, I have chronic migraine disorder. Lucky me. This is one that was recently published. I think it came out in December, I want to say, something like that.
Yeah, I think late last year.
And so the idea of us reading it together because, as my partner, Marcus has been like part of the journey and like figuring out what's going on with migraine stuff. And I think for both of us, we have found it like helpful to learn about it and understand things. Like early on we watched. How would you describe The Headache by Tom Zeller Jr.?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so this book is about primary headache disorders. Migraine, like Cole is a sufferer of, and there are different types, right? And the author of this book has cluster headaches.
Background is being a
Journalist.
for like science type issues. Is really nice because he like grounds it a little bit in his personal experience, but he's talking a lot. Like we learned quite a lot about cluster headache.
Yeah.
But I would say there's limits on like the amount of research that's happened for both cluster and migraine. There's a little bit more focus on migraine. I would say like a slight bit more focus on migraine.
Yeah.
And
cluster is rare.
Yeah, exactly.
A lot rarer, I think. Yeah.
And it sort of follows a little bit of like personal memoir type stuff for him, but also referencing personal narratives of other people that he interviews and talks to throughout the book. Got a little bit of historical stuff. That's true. A bit about like historical as in like further back history, It also has a little bit like within the 5-year changes and like upcoming sort of trajectories and stuff. Yeah. There are some criticisms that you'll find if you look up like the book on Goodreads, which makes sense, or on Pagebound. We're now on Pagebound. And some people didn't quite seem to like that it was like they either wanted, some people wanted more like academic rigor type vibes, and some people wanted and less of the memoir, and some people wanted more of the memoir and less of the academic vibes.
Some people might have wanted more of a science book, and some people might have wanted more of a memoir. This is like a mix of both things. So this is a very accessible general audience book, like seeking to clarify to the public at large a little about primary headache disorders. It's not about like headaches in general, right? Like the headaches that you just get, that anyone could get. It's a really valuable book to like educate a wide audience and be very readable on this topic, and very like.
I would easily recommend it to anybody.
Yeah,
who
very,
like either got a recent diagnosis and wants to understand more, or somebody who like has a loved one impacted by one of these disorders who wants to understand more. Like I would consider like a good entry point,
or is just interested in like something that affects a lot of people that you don't think about a lot of the time, right? That like society at large maybe understands super well. And if you are just interested in something that affects a lot of people. So the structure of the book, like I think questionable, right? Like you'll get a chapter that's like sort of more like that personal style memoir, and then we get a couple chapters that's like kind of esoteric seeming, like even migraine in the ancient world stuff,
or like,
and the style
debates
is
within medicine.
Debates within medicine. The style is a little like rambling, conversational, a little maybe sometimes disorganized or scattered, funny. And I mean, I guess another frustration maybe for some people could be that like, the takeaway of this book is like we actually don't understand migraine that well. We don't know what causes it yet, for sure. Science, like there's so much debate about that. We have some medications that can help some people some of the time. We don't understand why or how they're helping.
I think that's like a really good point because like, well, it's a great ability for somebody who's recently been diagnosed or somebody who wants to understand it. It doesn't replace like going to a neurologist, like the grim truth of like migraine, unfortunately, as Marcus is kind of referencing, is that like there's a lot we don't know. You can try to start understand things, and that can make a considerable difference. You don't reach a point where you're like, and it's understood, you know what I mean? Like that's not the state of what's going on. So it sort of in some ways could feel ultimately dissatisfying to some readers.
For sure.
So definitely one where like if I would recommend it over some of the other books that I've read about migraine that are a little bit more esoteric and historical, or a little bit more
technical.
Technical. So but and it was nice to read together. We read it, Marcus read it to me while I was doing my little Dr. Cephaly treatments. That was fun.
Good general interest book on something that affects a lot of people that we don't have all the answers for, and so I can't give you all the answers. And it's, I wouldn't call it like a non-fiction book of the year where the structure and presentation is like flawless, but hey, I'm not even always looking for that,
Right. It's probably like a 4-star for me.
Oh yeah, me too. Me too.
And something that I would recommend to people. So it's like, it's one of those things where it's kind of interesting that like there are quibbles and stuff.
It's a little quirky.
Like I still would like recommend it. I want to buy a copy. Our next book is one of the ones that I've read. So this is Jill by Amy Dillon, which originally I picked to read as part of Victober, but I never finished. And I got maybe like, I want to say like 2/3 of the way through.
You got to the funny passage about the dogs.
Yeah, I got to the funny passage about the dogs. Jill is an interesting book. So it's one of those books where the characters, for me, are interesting but not necessarily likable, right? So I think Jill is like a really interesting figure, especially for the time and sort of the things that she does to navigate the world. So at the beginning, she's not really happy with her family life circumstances, and so she decides to sort of cast off and like run away, essentially, and she goes and like lives life for a while as essentially a maid, and she wants to be a traveling maid specifically, and it's a little bit about her adventures and the person that she's working for, who she kind of has like a crush on, and then the various antics that she gets up to while she's acting as a maid. It's got like different class focus, which is nice. It's adventure. There's like things happening that are like, what's gonna happen, and very antics driven. But Jill herself is like a little bit, she's a little bit cold. She's fairly calculating, and she tends to look at things as like, how can I get what I want from this scenario, right? Which isn't a problem. But she's less fun in some ways. What I really found myself feeling that I found kind of curious was that I kind of think this would have been really fun to read when I was like 14 or 15, which isn't to say that it's juvenile, but more that I think I would have connected more so with the idea of a young person doing these different adventures and stuff like that, and trying to like strike forth into the world with her own interests at heart. I think I would have found that more interesting in itself, or like more engaging and like provoking, I guess, like at that time in my life, because it does feel like a coming of age story, and would offer this as like a queer character who's a little bit not a little bit unconventional, who's very unconventional, but ultimately like the characters aren't super likable. So I think that's kind of why I stalled out. But then when I picked it back up, I finished it like in a day. So yeah, it's good. I don't love it, but it was good. Yeah. All right, so next up we got The Last Dance by Mark Billingham. It's a book that I got from the library. Ooh. I picked it out because it had a blurb on the cover from Richard Osman and from, I think, Janice Hallett as well, who I often like books with her blurbs. And it's a mystery series. It's the first of a new mystery series by Mark Billingham, who apparently is pretty prolific and has written a lot. I haven't read him previously. The Last Dance follows a main character whose wife, he's a cop, it's set in England, and his wife, who was also a cop working on like corruption type stuff, had been killed prior to the start of the book. And so he's just recently come back to work and is working on a recent homicide, actually like sort of two homicides that happened near each other, and trying to figure out what happened. And so the story very much so is a first novel within a series. So like you get like a conclusion to the primary mystery that he's investigating, but you just kind of get things pushed forward a little bit for the mystery relating to his wife's death. And it's a book that has, it's funny at times. Like there's like a portion that I read to Marcus because I found it very funny. And it's funny. It's funny and interesting, but it's definitely like a first in the series. So it's not super tight exactly in like everything's finished here. Like there's a lot left on the table. So and you have a bit of a cliffhanger at the end for the stuff related to his wife. But it was fun. I enjoyed it. The title, The Last Dance, in part references that he and his wife were did like competitive dance stuff. What do you call it? Like amateur competitive dancing. So it was nice. It was a good mystery. I would read the next one. I like Mark Billingham's voice and like his comedic style. Nice. I think it's the main character whose name I can't remember, and I don't have the book with me. He's definitely like one of those guys where like he's a little bit quirky, and he's like a little bit like disconnected from his peers, and like he's saying like funny goofy things and like figuring out, he's like a little bit of a rogue agent type. Okay. Do you know what I mean? And so I think it will be interesting to see how the author like shows his vulnerabilities, or shows his vulnerabilities, but also like builds up his connections with other people within his. So like there's definitely connections with like his dance community, and that's very nice and sort of reminiscent of like the Richard Osman series, and how there's like a group of people connecting to each other there, but he only just slightly has that at work. And I think that's something that I would want in the next book, to see like how does he connect with yeah. So you read a book called Alien Cult.
Yeah, that's right.
This video is gonna be long.
Yeah, this video is gonna. So I read a movie tie-in book. It's called Alien Cult. It was one of the many Alien books published by Titan Books. So this came out recently. I wanted to check it out. So this is a fun book. It's creative, which I think is the most important thing for like one of these tie-in things in a long-running series, is to like have some new ideas, try something a little different. This book does try some different stuff. This isn't the best Alien tie-in book I've read, that would be Alien into Charybdis by Alex White. But this one shares with that book that like they're genuinely creative. They like genuinely have some fun, fresh ideas, and are like willing to try something a little bit different. and like the fact that the two of them do that like put them like above a lot of related alien books, which are just like what you'd expect. So
in this case, what was the thing that he did that was a little bit different?
So like our main characters are like law enforcement people. So like there's a little investigation, like it's a little X-Filey sort of situation. That's not so typical for alien books, which usually follow like Marine, like a soldier, or like a blue collar worker who works for the company. Maybe one or two other like familiar archetypes from the movies. There's not like a space FBI agent in the movies, so like that's fun. There are not a lot of actual aliens in the book. Like there's something else that's like
the cult,
the threat, and is interesting and is like inventive and a little unexpected. If you're interested in like transhumanist weirdos, you might think some of this stuff is kind of fun. So this is a fun book. If you want to hear a nice discussion about it and a fun interview with the author at the end, you can. There's an episode about it on my favorite podcast, the Authorized Novelizations podcast. So look that up. Yeah.
Yep. All right.
I picked this alien book to start off 2026 just because it came out super recently. Then, I realized, it starts with an A. So I'm going to do an alphabet challenge for 2026. I'll do an A book, a book that starts with B, a book that starts with C, etc. So, yeah, that was the book that
Stay tuned.
That was the book that kicked it off.
For A. All right, so the next one that I read, and we're almost there. I'm so sorry that this video is
it's fine.
3,000 years long.
Yes, thank you for sticking with us to 3 hours of video.
Yeah. Like and subscribe if you stuck it through. Anyways, so the next book that I read, and you'll see I was on a little bit of a mystery kick. So I read Murder Under Her Skin by Stephen Spotswood. This is the second book in the Lillian Pentecost and Will Parker series by Stephen Spotswood, which is a historical fiction series that features a established, really fancy Sherlock Holmes style smart lady detective named Lillian Pentecost and her new assistant Will Parker, who is a young woman-ish, like she's like there's a little bit like non-binary type vibes, who recently started assisting Lillian Pentecost. Will in this book sort of like connects a little bit more with Will's past, whereas the first book is like kind of how they met and their first case together. This book explores Will Parker's past when she used to work for a circus. So somebody is murdered at the circus that she worked for, and so she goes back to try and help figure out like what happened, especially because her mentor was accused of doing the crime. So her mentor's in prison currently. So Will Parker goes with Lillian Pentecost to try and figure out what's happening. And I really like this book for sort of giving me more of the characters. And it's a really nice book because I think in that light of like developing the characters in the series, because it gets a little bit into Will's past, like her previous community, and also how she relates to her future. So sort of because those two things are interconnecting, her past and her future, it really makes her think a lot about like her direction in life. And there's some different elements going on. There's like a little bit of like a substance abuse story angle that's happening that can be like tricky for some people, and yeah, it's a really great historical series. I think I want to say it's set maybe 1920s-ish, something like that. Yeah, in there. I'm not sure exactly, but yeah, it's a lot of fun. I actually have the third book out from the library now, and I'm hoping to read it shortly. And I really like the series because it has great sort of disability rep for Lillian Pentecost, who has, I think, multiple scoliosis. And Will Parker is also great, sort of like queer and gender stuff representation as well, potentially. And they're both smart and like in different ways. So like it's not like a Sherlock Holmes and Watson scenario where Watson's like in the original book kind of like a dummy. Do you know what I mean? Like he has some skills and it's useful sometimes, but like a lot of it is like Watson, you dummy. Whereas this is very much like Will's contributing different things that are like very important and helpful. So great series, strongly recommend it. I'm excited to read more. So Marcus, what's your B book?
So my B book is very short. It is Brother Jacob by George Eliot. This is one of two pieces of short fiction that George Eliot wrote, and the other being The Lifted Veil. I think a lot of editions include these together, Brother Jacob and The Lifted Veil. So I really like this. I thought this is easier to like than The Lifted Veil. The Lifted Veil is a little bit of a challenging text, and it's not like the most like, ooh, fun, you know?
Right.
This is really fun.
And it's playing with genre a little bit, whereas I don't think this is, right?
Not so much, yeah. This is really fun. Very funny.
He was tee-hee-heeing it up.
This is a real hoot, yeah. Yeah, it's a great little see George Eliot flexing some comedic muscles. I do think like with this being short, you know, you do so at the end I think ultimately George Eliot did not fully have like the screwball comedy muscle to like once it really like hits like, oh, now we're gonna get like a really protracted like mistaken identity and like trying to cover up the misunderstanding like shenanigans, you know? And George Eliot's like, yeah, I'm not like
gonna do that.
I'm not gonna do that. I'm not like Howard Hawks or nothing. I'm not gonna like have a bunch of like goofy shenanigans and like, you know, this isn't gonna be like Bringing Up Baby or nothing, you know? So it kind of like just resolves instead of like going into like escalating shenanigans to like keep the secret and like, ooh, you know, like funny nonsense. Georgia, it's like, yeah, okay, now we're like resolving. We're like wrapping up.
We're done now.
Yeah. So despite like that little bit of like, you know, I think like there's that little bit of let down that, you know, we didn't like, you know, like sort of keep amping up on this concept. It is it's a short novella. It reaches its climax and then sort of resolves. It's only 55 pages, I think. Like there's like a introduction. Like there's notes at the end. So this is like 77 pages with the notes, I think.
So you would recommend this?
This is a blast. I would really strongly recommend this. I do think like this is. I think there's some thematically interesting stuff like going on here. And so the main character of this is a guy who, when he's young, decides he wants to set up a confectionery shop, like a candy shop. He's like entranced by candy shops when he's little. He winds up setting one up. Winds up feeling a little like, okay, well maybe this isn't all I thought it was when I was like, you know, a child. I do think the choice of so he winds up, some stuff happens, he wants to go to America, he winds up in the Caribbean. I do think like the sugar thing, like something is going on here with the sugar thing as relates to colonialism and like getting rich easy and like other people stealing and other people's like work. There's definitely like some stuff going on here.
If you read this during Victober, you could say Empire.
Oh yeah.
But we didn't.
Yeah. But yeah, and I think some of the stuff that's fun in Middlemarch or like in maybe even in Trollope, like when we get like a description of a community and how the community reacts to something new in the community, like a shop, a new establishment, something that is the talk of the town. And like, how does that sort of take shape and develop? Like, there's a lot of that. There's a lot of fun stuff like that in here. You know, of course, like within this, compressed in a little short story format. But strongly recommend this. I really liked it. I just remembered that notes at the end, the afterword here is very interesting. Talks about like thematic similarities or thematic contrasts that emerge between this and Silas Marner and this and The Mill and the Floss, and like how looking at the things in the order that they were written, you know, you see like what the relationship, either the similarities or the opposites, right, that exist like in these works. Like you did read The Mill and the Floss, so I think you would find like that afterward interesting, you know? Yeah. But
hell yeah. Nice. So I'm gonna talk about 3 books real quick in a row. So when we had, a lot of the United States recently had a pretty big snowstorm, and so when that was coming, I was like, let's go to the library, and I picked out a lot of books, including novellas, because I wanted to just have like a bunch of short, nice things to read. So I only have one still physically with me. So that's Cinder House by Freya Marske, who wrote, what was it? Sword Crossed and A Marvelous Light, the last Binding trilogy. So this is a Cinderella retelling where the Cinderella type figure, it's not a huge spoiler alert because it's in the description, but she becomes a ghost. So she's killed pretty early on, and she's a ghost that sort of haunts this house. And Marska like builds up this thing where the Cinderella character kind of like is the house. Like there's like a real like she's the ghost of the house, but like it's very much tied into it. So it has interesting world building around how the magic works for that, which is fun. And then it has like a little bit of like a queer romance that's going on as she's trying to connect with the rest of the world and sort of like find something beyond herself. So it does have some like interesting stuff related to disability. The author talks in the afterword, I believe, about how she wrote it in part out of like her experiences with long COVID. And yeah, it's a nice story. It's good. I would recommend it. And yeah, I liked it. It was good. It was interesting. Had a fun new spin on the Cinderella story, which is what I would want. So I like that. And then I also read The Lies of the Ajungo by Moses Oze Otome. At the library, I actually first saw a more recent entry into this series by the author that looked really interesting. So then I went looking for the first book in the series. And it is like sort of like a African fantasy style thing. I forget, I think there's like a name for that sort of subgenre, but it follows a young boy who he lives with his mom in sort of a kind of like a desolate and like resource limited community where they don't really have enough water, and there's sort of this like exterior other community that is somehow, and it's kind of like very vague and a little bit confusing for the young boy, but it's somehow impacting his community's access to water, and they don't have enough, and actually like their tongues get cut out as sort of like part of like this sort of like oppressive process, and his mother gets sick and like is at risk of like dying, and so he decides to go out and try to find some water. His tongue hasn't been cut out yet, so that's an important part of it where like he hasn't reached that part of coming of age within the society, and so instead of sort of staying with the society and sort of trying to hope that things will be okay with his mom, he goes out and he looks for water, which then leads him towards connecting with different people in the region, right? And so the book itself, like in the cover flap, is described as a fantasy fable, which I think is a great way to describe it because it has some of that sort of like origin story type style where you can sort of like think of it as like, here's like the beginning of how these like societies, I could very much see this being like the novella of how a society began, and then like you have like the 1,000 years later stories, like it has that nice sort of like seed like quality for like a rich world building, and then the other thing that it's kind of interesting about it is that it has some fight scenes in it, like sort of like a martial arts type stuff going on. And so I actually think it would be a really cool book for like someone who would connect to like there being like a little bit of a fight scene type stuff. Like it didn't feel like an anime or anything like that. I don't watch anime, so I can't speak to it. But it had like that sort of like action adventure thing that you can imagine like liking in like a cartoon or like animated adventure. Do you know what I mean? Like I know that like I know that Airbender is not an anime per se, but like it's sort of like a young figure going out to try to resolve a problem, and here are the things that happen type of thing, and there's a little bit of action and fighting and adventure, and so like it has a nice thing there, but it's also a sort of like sort of political fable about like resources and oppression. So it's doing a lot of things really interestingly, and yeah, it's nice. It's good. I feel like sometimes with novellas, they end up in this space where I'm like, I'm not like crazy in love with it, but I like everything that it's doing and would recommend it.
Sure.
Definitely. So I think I would read more in the series. It stands out to me. So yeah, it was good. The other novella that I got was Murder by Memory by Olivia Waite. Olivia Waite is somebody who's previously written historical romance novels, and Murder by Memory is a science fiction. It's set on a spaceship, like a huge spaceship. Do you know what I mean? Like a like a intergalactic cruise type level spaceship, as like this community that's like going elsewhere. And so it has this thing where there's a mechanism where for the people's lifespans to kind of continue the length that they need to continue to get where they're going, their memories are sort of stored in these books, and then there's a way in which their bodies can be remade and then their memories bopped back into the new body. And so it opens up with this character who is a detective on the spaceship and in the community who she's suddenly in a different body, and there's been like some tampering going on with her and other people's like memory book stuff, and there's a little bit of like what's happening here. And so it's got a little bit of mystery in this science fiction. I didn't like it. I was gonna say I liked it okay, but I didn't really like it. So
tell us how you really feel.
Yeah, tell us how you really feel. So it felt very vibes-y. Like there were some things that were interesting about the spaceship and sort of like the memory storage thing and the new bodies thing that I think were sound and really good. But then there were other things that felt very like cozy core type books. And I'm not always looking for cozy core, given how I earlier trashed Travis with Baldry.
We haven't read it. We might like it a lot.
Maybe you might like it.
Yeah.
I don't know. But I sometimes don't really want cozy core, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, there's certain things where it's like, oh. But then there's some lines that I liked okay. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's sometimes when something's very vibes is, like, its primary thing.
Oh, sure.
If the vibes feel good, you're like, oh, that's nice. That's okay. Mm-hmm. And if the vibes don't hit, you're like, why is this so vibes-based? Mm-hmm. And then for this, the actual mystery going on, and I think this is in part because it's hard to have like a really robust mystery in a novella, was just sort of like, like it was okay. It was the sort of thing where there's a little bit of a mystery, but then it's pretty quickly figured out, and then it's like explained to you. Mm-hmm. Do you know what I mean? Like there's no progression of the mystery. It's just kind of explained to you. Yeah. And then you're like, all right, there's the mystery. It's explained. And now we do this next portion. And then the book's done. So it felt a little bit too vibes-based for me. It felt a little bit too formulaic, where it's like we're at this stage of the story. Now it's this stage. Now it's this stage.
Sure.
So I didn't like it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing.
Yeah. All right, Marcus, tell us about your C book.
So I read this book called The Candlemass Road by George MacDonald Fraser. It's also not that long. You know, I'm choosing short books a lot for this alphabet challenge, but at some point I'll have some. So George MacDonald Fraser is someone who, I think if you're like sort of a Wikipedia trawler, you might wind up hearing about him at some point. His famous series are the Flashman Papers. I haven't read any. My understanding is they're about like a British military officer who's like a coward and a scumbag, but everything always works out for him in the end. Yeah, they're like comedic and I think, you know, well beloved. So I picked this up at some point in a used bookstore. This is an interesting book because it doesn't really like fit super neatly into like one thing that you want. Like it's, I'd say like this is like kind of mostly like a comedy adjacent at least book. Like this is actually pretty comedic. It's not really like so much a like blood and guts like medieval warfare thing. I should talk about it a little. This book is set like during the time of the Anglo-Scottish border reivers in like the 1500s. This is something that Mr. Fraser has studied. He wrote a nonfiction book about that at one point, and so this is like a short narrative sort of set in that world. So the border reivers, which I'd never heard about this, the border region between England and Scotland in like the Tudor and Stuart periods was apparently some kind of Mad Max hellscape where brigands went about like killing people left and right, and there was sort of like a very loose pretense of law. It was more sort of about
Might is right.
what can we let everyone get away with to sort of keep some semblance of balance.
Wow.
So there's not a lot of historical fiction like set in this time. I think Sir Walter Scott wrote a little bit about this stuff, but there's not like tons of historical fiction. So like this is one among not many options like about this kind of interesting little niche thing in history. But so this is mostly like kind of like a funny book. And it's not like so primarily like a sword swinging like blood and guts medieval warfare thing, although at the end there is quite a bit of blood and guts. And it's not really like so much a like slightly romantic like rousing adventure, but like there's a little bit of that. So like because it's not really mostly any of like those things super clearly, it's not like so satisfying on any of those three fronts. Like the ending is not like so satisfying, I think, again, like like from a sort of adventure romantic point of view, it's like a little bit of a letdown ending. And when I mentioned like that a lot of this is comedic, like it seems that George MacDonald Fraser, like later in life, he sort of reinterpreted the same story or elements of the same story, but like as an outright like comedy and farce.
Oh, that's interesting.
So like, but some of the comedy like is here. I think later he just, I guess, decided to remix some elements into like a full-on like really like goofy comedy.
Antics.
Yeah. This is written in like there's a little bit of an Elizabethan accent on the prose here. It's got an old-timey flavor. That can be fun, but like it takes some getting into. You gotta like ease into it. So like I don't come away from this book like really like recommending it. I think I'm gonna read more George MacDonald Fraser. Like I want to try out one of those Flashman books at one point. He seems like an interesting guy. Like someone who I want to look more into, but like I wouldn't say this is like a super standout or anything, and then I come away from it super recommending it.
Cool. Awesome. So the last book to talk about is just one that I read. So I read Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte. It was actually pretty funny because I started reading it earlier this week. I want to say like on like Tuesday or something. And I was reading it downstairs and our housemate and friend Kit was upstairs. And I just kept texting and being like, Wuthering Heights is insane. This book is crazy. And then they didn't respond or anything, but eventually I came upstairs and I saw them, and they had been upstairs reading Wuthering Heights at the same time.
For unrelated reasons.
Like we didn't plan it or anything.
You didn't prompt the Wuthering Heights.
Yeah, we didn't.
Messages.
We were inadvertently doing a buddy read. And so they started earlier than I did, and so they finished sooner. But Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte is a fascinating book. I in part read it because I was like, oh, maybe I'll want to see this adaptation that's coming out. And I knew enough about Wuthering Heights to know that I knew that some people characterized it as a romance, sort of, and that some people were like, oh, I like a Heathcliff more than a Darcy figure or something like that, which is insane if true. And then I knew that some people were like, oh, no, it's not a romance. It's a revenge tale. It's not romantic. What are you talking about? It's not. So I knew that there was like a little bit of tension there, but I didn't know much of the details of the story otherwise. And so it was really interesting to read because it is so propulsive. Like you really, really want to find out what's going to happen. Like I went through that very quickly. And it's such an interesting book. So obviously like, I don't like Heathcliff, or like you can try to understand him and like what he's doing, but look, I'm not going to be too specific because Marcus is maybe going to read the book or has started and hasn't gotten very far. So And then like of course it has like interesting narrative framing devices. So we first have Lockwood, and then we have there's another character named Nellie who is another sort of framing character, and then there's how it plays with like time, like where it picks up in the story and stuff is very interesting, and it's just so curious. I was telling our friend and Marcus that I feel like I don't have very many other instances where I read a book that seems like it's been interpreted by a lot of people as being one thing, and it seems to clearly not be that thing at all. So like that there are some people who understand, or it seems like a lot of people who understand it as primarily a romance, is insane. It's very curious. So if anybody has any like recommendations for things to read about Wuthering Heights, or like exploring it, I would be very interested, because it's so provoking. I don't know if I can see that movie though. The greatest love story ever told.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not going to get into it because other people have done it, but the director has like defended her choices around the book, saying that she did a movie that was like her 14-year-old self's vision of the story. And I think it is bananas. And it's like, no, actually you can apply your adult critical thinking to develop that further. So like, for instance, it would be really cool if somebody was like, oh, my childhood self understood this as being one thing, but my adult self can see it as being something else. Let's play with that tension. Like that could be really interesting. And that could also work really well even with the text. So like the text has a character, another young woman, Isabella, who thinks Heathcliff is a romantic figure, like really believes that to be so, and is like told like, no, he's not, and like things happen to make her think differently about that. And so like there could have been something interesting to do there with like how Isabella understood him to be a romantic figure, but then actually it's like this, but instead she doesn't do any of that. So it's just sort of like disappointing, but you could have been creative with that. You could have done something interesting with that. Like there's books that I read as a 14-year-old that I now think differently about as an adult, without like completely disavowing my childhood understanding of them. Like it makes it more interesting. That's like part of what's interesting about books. But maybe I'll talk more about Wuthering Heights in another video and like thoughts about it. So those are all the books that we read since we talked to you last.
Yeah. So
sorry this is such a long video. Maybe Marcus can cut down a lot of ums. We'll see. So thanks for sticking by if you stuck by, and hopefully we'll be making more videos that are shorter.
Yeah, if you were watching this after our long absence, and if you watched the whole thing, you're heroic.
Or you're just Marcus's mom.
Yeah.
In which case you're still a heroic figure, Marcia.
Yeah.
All right, bye!